Welcome, Dr. Linda Rammler, to the Social Chase Show. Linda Rammler is now the Transition Postsecondary and Adult Support Coordinator at the UConn Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities in Farmington. She has been working with people who have different disabilities, including autism, and their families for many years. She had developed and taught programs for parents to help their students get ready for life after school and for adolescents and young adults on how to be an adult. She also has done a lot of work on customizing employment first for all, and helping services providers and community members to be more inclusive and welcoming to everyone. For 6 years, she helped adolescents and young adults to go directly into paid jobs that were a good match for them and their employer. She loves working with self advocates. She believes disability is natural and all people with disabilities and their families must get their supports they need to live a good life. She feels everyone should self determine their own life course. She is married to a retired disability rights lawyer, was the mother of four, and has two dogs and three cats. So, Dr. Linda, please tell me, what is adulting?
Adulting is the process of growing up. It starts when you start realizing what it is you may want to do as an adult, but it gets very serious when you're in high school and certainly after you leave high school, because you need to learn what you can do as an adult and where you might need help. But it's in all the areas that adults run their lives. So it has to do with places they choose to live. It has to do with how they manage their money. It has to do with the work that they have and whether they like it or not, and what they can do, maybe by getting more education, if they want to get more education to get a better job. It has to do with knowing their rights, being able to self-determine even their day-to-day choices, like what they want to eat for breakfast and who they want to hang out with and whether or not they want to have a relationship later on in life. And it also has to do with knowing your civil rights and knowing what to do if your rights are violated. So basically, adulting is that whole process, because nobody wakes up one morning and has all that knowledge and skills. It's a process of gradually learning and building on what you have. And at some point, it may be saying, this is not for me. I can't do this. And I'll give you an example. My husband uses a power wheelchair. So transportation for him, getting on a standard bus, is something he can't do. So at some point, he's got to say, that kind of travel training isn't going to work for me. I need to have a way to have access to transportation that allows me to use my wheelchair on it. So he's still an adult, but the direction changes so that he's actually using maybe a different system than a public bus, which somebody else might be able to use without any problem. But the adulting part of it is knowing you need transportation, knowing you need a ride, and having the ability to get what you need for transportation. And again, it goes for housing, it goes for employment, it goes for your spiritual life, it goes for your social life, how you manage your money. Do you have, what do you think about that definition, Chase?
That's interesting. I actually thought it was in the real word since I heard it from another TV show. But it does sound like it's a real word.
It is a real word. More and more people are using it these days, and I think it may have to do with some of the, I don't know, it seems like every new generation thinks there's something wrong with the younger generation. And I think one of the reasons this came about is because, for a whole lot of reasons, I think that young people today didn't have the same responsibilities. For example, I had growing up, like I was 7, down to the corner store to buy milk and bread. How many 7-year-olds these days go out and do that? Not very many, right? So adulting it has become a word, and it does mean this process. So for people who have been doing things like that since they were 7, we got to start somewhere. And it means starting a little bit later. So now you know it's a real word.
Cool. Okay, so what if you still need help with things people with disabilities can do independently?
Well, let me back take a step back on that a little bit, because I want to address how too many people look at the word independence. Most people think everybody as an adult is independent. That is so untrue. We're all interdependent. We all have people in our lives or know people that can help us do certain things. Like, I'm dependent on other people if my computer doesn't work. There's no way I can fix it myself.
Right.
So I think with independence, we really want to look at interdependence, where people are part of a community and rely on each other. Then there's people who really need full support. Maybe they've got an extreme physical challenge and they may not be able to communicate without a device. They may not have had a lot of exposure to things. So people tend to look at these as two different ends, and you're either one or the other. You're either independent or you need help and you can't make your own decisions. The reality is that there's a whole bunch of steps in between, and some of us need support pretty constantly with some things like money managing, or even with relationships, knowing who's safe, who's not. And that's okay to ask for support when you need it. And I think a lot of people with disabilities are sort of discouraged from doing that because the emphasis is on independence, independence, independence. Oops, you're not independent. Now what do we do with you? And I think the focus needs to be on, let's get you as independent as we can, and then figure out what kinds of supports would work, whether it's people that you know and who care about you and love you. Is it assistive technology? A lot of people have been able to live independently with smart homes who couldn't have lived independently before. They may still need some help, especially if their smart home technology breaks down, but they can be more independent. So I think the idea is to, and you could also use community resources. So I think the idea is we need to stop looking at people as either capable or not capable, but as having different needs for support in different areas. Some people may be really good at money management, and some people may be really, really good at home decorating, and other people may be really, really good at finding their way around the neighborhood. We all have different talents. We all have different strengths. Yes, we need to build on them, but I think we also need to be comfortable with what we can't do and be able to say to people, this is something I can't do. I need help. I can't read very well. Could you read it to me and explain it to me? Is one example. And people need to feel comfortable with who they are, because you know what? Disability is natural, and everybody, like I said, needs some support.
Okay, so what are the most important things to know about yourself as you become an adult?
Okay, there's so many things you need to know about yourself. The very first thing you need to know about yourself, and I just have to quote a friend of mine who had autism and was non-speaking, and he typed to communicate. And what he typed was, I am not a mistake. God doesn't make mistakes. I'm not a mistake. He's very faithful. He's very religious. But I thought that kind of summed it up, is that none of us are mistakes. We're all people who have gifts. We're all people who have strengths. We all have interests. We have things that we can do. The first thing to know about yourself is that you're good at stuff, and to figure out what you're good at and what you like, and also what you don't like. So people don't kind of put you in situations where you're not living your life in a good way because you're unhappy. So the very first thing people need to know about themselves is what they like and what's good about them, including what others say that is good about them. And I think a lot of young people tend to think negatively about themselves. They may know they have a hard time doing things, and sometimes people make a big issue of it. You have to kind of say to those people, you're wrong. I may not be able to do something you want me to do, but I can do all these other things. I'm good at these other things. And even if you're not technically good at things, most people have like great smiles or good personalities. I mean, those things count. So the very first thing you need to know about yourself is you're okay. And having a disability is natural. The second thing I think people need to know about themselves is literally what they cannot do and where they're going to need help, or where they think they can learn to do things. I grew up learning how to use a public washing machine where you put coins in, because we lived in a neighborhood in an apartment that didn't have a washing machine. So I knew that. But when I went to college, a lot of my dorm mates had no idea how to do that. And I remember going in there and just watching people in tears because they couldn't operate the machine. And I showed them how to do it. They could do it by themselves after that. But what if they couldn't? They would have to ask me or someone else to go in and help them every time. And that's okay. People need to know it's okay to get support when you need it. Sometimes you can. And they also need to be aware that sometimes they're going to need more help than other times. And those, I think, are the most important things. The next most important thing is to learn about what adult life is. It has to do with having a place of your own to call home. It has to do with getting a job that you like and is good for your employer, where you're getting good pay and benefits, and you have a future because your career is something you can keep growing in. You have to have, like I said, access to whatever education, because all of us are adult learners. All of us adults are still lifetime learners. And so it may be that you take a cooking class in adult education or something, or you volunteer in your community because you connect with other people that way. You need to know who is in your social circle and who you can invite into your social circle because of people you know, or people who the people you know, or people who share your interests because you're involved in something in your community that's a good match for you. And again, I think you need to know what you don't like. So if somebody doesn't like, if you don't like to work out, one of your career goals probably shouldn't be being a police officer, because police officers who graduate as police officers have to be in good shape. So if you hate physical education, we need to have a conversation about whether you hate physical education so much that you can't be a police officer. You choose not to be a police officer. I'm not going to tell you you can't be a police officer, but you need to know that about yourself. I hate phys ed. And you need to know that something you may want to do in life, like be a police officer, requires you to be physically fit. And so it may not be a great match, but what else could you do? And that's part of a discovery process that I think all young people have to do. What is out there? When we're growing up, we're pretty limited to our families. We're pretty limited to our schools. And we're pretty limited to things that either our parents or our schools do with us or show us. As you get older, there's a whole wide world out there. There's people with all different kinds of jobs. There's people with all different kinds of things that they do in their free time. There's all different ways to live. And I think people, young adults and adolescents, need to start exploring those things so that they can make informed choices for themselves. And that's called self-determination. And once they've self-determined what they want in all of those areas, they can then advocate for it. So that's another thing that I think young people need to learn to do, is to really advocate for themselves, and maybe later on advocate for others too, because they got what they want and other people may not have the same advantage that they have. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think people? I want to turn this back on you. What do you think people need to learn about themselves?
What they like, and what job is good for them, and also did they make the right choice?
Yeah.
And just being happy with their lives.
Right. And again, if you need help, you need help, and it's okay. And people need to feel confident about that. So.
Why is it important to get a job, and how can you get one?
Okay. Why is it important to work? Why is it important to work for anyone? One is you make money. If you make money, you're more likely to get the things you want in your life. You're more likely to be able to eat at the places you want to eat at, buy the foods you want to buy, which may be more expensive than the stuff you buy if you don't have a lot of money. You want to be able to get a place that you want to live in. You have to pay for transportation. If you work, even if you get something like Social Security, income, disability income or social supplemental security income, you will always make more money working. You will always make more money working. And that's, I think, important because, again, it has to do with you don't get stuff for free in our society. And if you do, it's usually not the stuff you want. It's usually not the quality you want. You may not get the quantity you want. It may just be different from what you want. The other reason people need to work is that it gives us all a sense of satisfaction and a sense of belonging and contributing to society. I think, like, how would you feel, Chase, if somebody said you couldn't record the show anymore?
It gets a little bit surprising.
And you'd be disappointed, I bet, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So why do you like doing the show? Is it fun?
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. So working gives you stuff to do that's cool. And the best thing is to find out something you're good at, like you doing the show, and to be able to find a job that matches or is close to what you're good at, and that you're not hired because the company says, oh, you've got a disability, I pity you. But you're hired because the company says, you have some great characteristics that can help me out. So it's a win for the employer and it's a win for you. You end up liking your job. You feel proud of yourself for having your job. And maybe best of all, you get to meet people who are in your social circles. So people I know who have gotten jobs, whether it's on a loading dock at Poland Springs Bottling Company or in an accountant's office running errands, those types of things, they've all met their coworkers and become friendly with their coworkers. So they now have stuff to do outside of work because people invite them to go bowling or to go just hang out on a Friday night. And it expands their social life, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And the other thing about working is that if you don't work, you really lose a lot of the skills that you worked so hard on in school and worked really hard on growing up. So why lose what you worked so hard on? So I think like money, social, contributing, continuing to learn, those are all kinds of things that are important to work. Now the question is, the second half of this question is, how do you find a job? Remember I said before that there's not either or. Either you can work the way everybody else gets a job or you can't. That's wrong. That's a wrong way of thinking because there's lots of ways to do what we call customizing an approach to getting a job. And believe it or not, for people without disabilities, that happens a lot. So for example, I may know somebody who is hiring and I may think a neurotypical, we'll use that word, a neurotypical student that I know and I've met and I care about from my church is a good match for them. I may suggest to this person that they may want to interview and hire them. That person never has to fill out a job application. They never go through a real interview process. They're hired by the person who owns the company. So even people without disabilities sometimes customize their approach to employment. With people who have disabilities, we have to figure out where things break down in their getting a job. And that is mainly somewhere along the way, they need help that they're not given because people try to pre-teach all of those skills. And so I interviewed a man once, we were fake interviewing, and he was so nervous, he ended up crying. So why would I torture him getting a job with an interview? I would try to support him in connecting with employers who were willing to hire him based on recordings of him doing the things that were valuable to the employee. So that's to the employer rather. So that's customizing an aspect of employment. Some people use visual resumes. They have somebody take pictures of all the cool stuff they can do, and they put that on their resume instead of trying to write all the stuff that people tell you to write on a resume. So how do you get a job? Is you know where the gaps are in your ability to get a job. And if it's somebody who's being discriminatory, because you have a disability, then you need to know that there are resources out there like the Connecticut Human Rights and Opportunities Commission, Disability Rights Connecticut, and other advocacy organizations that can help you basically say to employers, you can't discriminate against me. But I think how you get a job is mainly through people you know and your family knows and people who you know knows, and by finding jobs out there that have a need for those things we talked about before that you need to know about yourself, the things that you're good at, the things you like to do, the things you don't want to do, so you don't want to work at a job that you're doing all that stuff every day, so you're unhappy. So that's how you would get a job, I think. You basically have to figure out what it is and go for it. And I feel really sad for some people who, get out of high school or get out of college and have never had an opportunity to learn what kinds of jobs are out there because they've been limited to some of the stuff that either their family or their school thinks is important, like, wiping down a table in the school cafeteria. That's not work experience. That's not getting out there and really having coworkers and so on. So I think that we have to make sure that we have things in place for young people to really learn what's out there and get excited about something, realize what they need to do to work in that setting. Maybe they can't be a veterinarian. Maybe they can't even be a vet tech because they wouldn't be able to take those classes, but I bet they could be a dog walker. I bet they could help babysit for pets when people go away. There's other things that they can do with animals. So how do you get a job? You sit down with people who love you and care about you and basically look at what you're good at, look at what you may need to learn. Maybe you do need to take a course or get a degree. That's okay. Maybe you want to give up on that and just learn some skills by hanging out with somebody who already does those jobs. That's called an apprenticeship. Maybe you want to take a couple courses here and there. Maybe you don't want to do any of that and you want to rethink what it is that you like and you're good at and kind of look at themes. So somebody who may want to work with animals, there's themes in there, like pet stores, like dog walking, like babysitting pets, like a whole bunch of things that they might be. Mucking stables. I love horses. I love mucking stables when I was growing up. So there are always things that people can do if they don't have their heart set on something really specific, because that really specific thing may not be hiring anybody. So look at themes and talk to people you know who care about you and really and if you need help, get help from somebody who can give you the help where you need it. Have you had to look for a job, Chase?
Yeah, I have one at Petco already.
And how did that go for you? Did you do everything by yourself, from filling out an application to getting hired?
Well, I did have a little help, like we're doing the application.
But you know what? I have to tell everybody, right now is a great time to look for a first job. It may not be a job you love, but people are hiring right now. It is a great time to look at those help wanted signs when you go shopping, to look at what's, we listen to the news and hear, they're talking to people all the time in the restaurant business that we can't serve as many customers because we don't have anyone to bus the tables, or we don't have anyone to seat people and make sure they're 6 feet apart. There are jobs out there right now that are looking for help. And so anybody who's interested in a job, go look at who needs employees and at least get a job and find out what it's like to work and get that money.
Nice. Okay, so good advice. What is social capital and why is it important?
Okay, so a couple times in our conversation, I've mentioned people you know, family, friends, students you went to school with, people you may hang out with in the community if you go to the Y, or even people you see a lot that are in the grocery store, for example. You may see the same clerk all the time. Social capital is knowing a lot of people and knowing them because they can either be friends, and help you with things like finding a job, finding a place to live, and so on. Or they can be people who can help you connect to places you may want to live, places you may want to work, churches you may want to go to, activities in the community you may want to join, and so on. So social capital starts with the people you know, and then figuring out how you can get to know more people. And some of the ways you can increase your social capital, as I call it, are to join things that you like. Find out what's in the community and do things that you like with them. Try to join something that other people like. And you can connect with them. Volunteering is a great way to meet people because there's usually a certain characteristic of people who volunteer. They're usually friendly and they want to be nice to people. You usually don't get grumpy people. It's usually friendly people who want to give back to their community. So that's a great place to develop more social capital, meet more people. Inviting people to do things with you is a way to build up that social capital. The more people you know, the more opportunities you have in life, and the more protected you are. So if any parents are listening to this, they need to know that you need to know more people, because if something happens to them or the people they think are going to be there when they're gone, they may not be. You need to get that social capital in place that doesn't necessarily involve your family. It may involve your extended family, but it is basically the people that make you feel welcome and included in your community. And it's really important to have that in place because it's safety. The more people who know you, for example, if you show up with a black eye, somebody's going to want to know how you got it. And somebody's going to want to help you. Did you really get it playing baseball in the park and somebody hit you in the eye with the baseball? Or did somebody hurt you? And if somebody hurt you, you need to go to the police. You need to report it. You obviously need to go to the hospital. You need to get medical care. The more safe you are and the more you get people to help you make good decisions and people to help you have a good quality of life.
That is good advice. Thank you so much for sharing with us about adulting.
Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome. And I think you participated in one of my courses. We're going to be doing another one pretty soon. So anybody who wants to participate in that, contact the UConn Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities, and we'll put you on our mailing list. So
I liked the program I did with you over the summer. It was pretty interesting and educational. Okay, thank you for joining the Social Shade Show, and I'm looking forward to hearing about the adulting program you're doing.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure with this interview.